Well, let's get more now on the special bond between President Trump and King Charles. And we can speak now to Julian Payne, who's a former communications secretary to their Royal Highnesses, the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall, now King Charles III and Queen Camilla. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. Let me just start by asking you for your observations so far. I know you don't work for the royal family any longer, but what's your observation of how things are going?
I think that they've had an extremely successful visit. I think you could not have had more pomp and circumstance, as we would say here in the UK, than the president was able to witness and enjoy these last couple of days. He's met a wide number of the family, of course, King Charles acting as host with the Queen. And you can tell from his remarks at the state banquet last night how much it's meant to the president. So I am sure that all parties involved so far will feel it's gone very well indeed.
Yeah, I mean, just listening to President Trump last night and then listening to some of the media pundits early this morning who were saying he was very much on his best behaviour. Do you think there were a few sighs of relief there at Windsor Castle last night at the end of the evening, that everything went, as well as perhaps could have been expected?
I think sometimes the media like to perhaps expect or hope for mischief, but actually, the president is a global statesman and is no stranger to these big events. Of course, no stranger to a state visit to the UK. I don't think it's a question of being on his best behaviour. Actually, I think he enjoys it very much, and he wants it to succeed just as much as the British royal family do. And when you look at the two of them together, when you listen to the warm words that have been exchanged between the two of them, it's clear that this has been a really good few days.
I mean, British royal protocol is not simple. I mean, it requires some research. It requires some homework. I mean, you were obviously there during the first Trump state visit, and there were comments that there were one or two protocol hiccups during that. I mean, do correct me if I'm wrong, and add some colour to that. But when you looked at the pictures of last night and today, have you noticed any protocol hiccups at all?
I haven't seen any hiccups. I know that people previously had said that perhaps the president, when he was visiting for a working visit with the Queen at Windsor, that he had moved in front of the Queen when inspecting the military lineup. Now, actually, that is protocol, and that is what Her late Majesty would have wanted of him. I think it was portrayed as a hiccup, and in fact, they were doing it in the right way. I remember when the then Prince of Wales, now King Charles, was welcoming the president to Clarence House, where the Prince of Wales, now King, lives. Back for the first state visit, there was much trepidation that perhaps this meeting was going to be a showdown between the environmental prince and the oil and gas president, and they imagined that perhaps there'd be some kind of lecture from one to the other. And I remember talking to His Majesty about this and him saying, well, why would anybody imagine that I would do that? I am here to welcome this head of state on behalf of the UK. It's a state-to-state meeting. It's not an opportunity for anybody to start finger-wagging. And of course, when they did have their cup of tea, both the Queen, the King, the President and the First Lady enjoyed each other's company enormously. And that meeting ran over. It was only meant to be, I think, about 20 minutes, and they were there for nearly an hour. So what you see is within those state-to-state moments, those personal connections start to actually shape and deepen the bond between the two countries.
Right, so you're saying they had 3 times more to talk about than anyone had anticipated before that meeting had taken place. And we heard President Trump saying that King Charles is, quote, a great gentleman and a great king. I mean, what do you think they talked about during their conversations? What sort of topics could you imagine the two of them discussing?
Look, I think the first thing to say is the King understands absolutely where the constitutional red lines are. So he knows what is government business and he knows what is diplomatic business. And in many ways, the King is the senior diplomat that the UK can wield on the world stage. That said, I'm sure they will have been discussing the topics that all of us talk about on the world stage, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the global economy, challenges with the environment and the impact it's having in different parts of the world. All of those things will be topics that they will discuss. They're areas of shared mutual interest. They may not have exactly the same point of view on every single one, but the ability to discuss and the ability to share views on these topics is absolutely what will be going on behind those closed doors.
I mean, there are lots of photographs, lots of pictures that everyone will have seen around the world, extremely beautiful pictures, almost made for television moments. Who do you think stole the show?
That's a very good question. I mean, personally, I always like to see the magnificent horses as they parade through Windsor Great Park. All eyes always are on the First Lady, on the Queen, and of course on the Princess of Wales. But I think it's always really interesting to see. What I look at is the body language between everybody. And I see in the relationship between the King and the President, there is a familiarity there. Don't forget, these two individuals have known each other going all the way back to the beginning of the 2000s. They first met in New York, I think, in 2005. And you can really see they have a little bit of a joke together. There is a warmth. There is a familiarity with one another. And when you're thinking about those state-to-state moments, having a connection with the individuals at the heart of it really, really helps. Just helps things to go along in a really nice and smooth way.
Yeah, and they're also a sort of similar age, aren't they? Because King Charles is 76, rising 77. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, 79, rising 80. But the King has been unwell lately, and that's been publicly acknowledged. I mean, are you detecting any signs, you know, and when you hear him speak, are you seeing him slow down a bit?
I've always known him to have one speed, which is go. And the reality is what you see is a very full diary, a very full commitment of activity during the last couple of days, a large amount of time spent outdoors, on both of them on their feet, hosting receptions, hosting dinners. These are not things that you are likely to be undertaking if you are in failing health. So I actually, as I stand back now, and I don't have obviously any inside knowledge on this, but I observe that the diary is full, the engagements are packed, and I take from that very good signs.
I mean, there were concerns, even, you know, as the presidential plane was arriving from the United States with those images that were projected on the walls of Windsor Castle, that Jeffrey Epstein was going to be, you know, a bit of an elephant in the room throughout this trip. And you know, there is a bit of a common thread with him because President Trump had dealings with him. The King's brother is known to have known him, Prince Andrew. And then Sir Keir Starmer's ambassador to the United States, Lord Mandelson, was sacked only last week. How successfully do you think they swept that story aside last night?
Yeah, look, there are rarely occasions when a state visit from any individual does not garner some form of protest or other. I know that the royal household is very accustomed to these noises off, one might say. They don't dismiss them, they don't take them, they don't minimize them. They'll of course be aware of them, but their job is to, as I say, it's the state welcoming the state. So while these things are going on, I don't think they distract too much from the really important business at hand. But that's not to say that it's not important that people have a voice and have the right to share their opinions.
Okay, so loads of work goes into a visit like this. I'm assuming you've been involved in the past in these sorts of visits, and you know better than anyone how time-consuming they are. Before I ask you what it's like organising such an event, let me just ask you, what's the motivation? What are the hosts hoping to get in return, do you think?
Well, it's a really good question. In many ways, the royal family are, as I say, they are our top diplomats on the world stage. And it's important to remember when they travel to other countries, they do so at the request of His Majesty's government. So they're not looking at the globe and thinking, well, where should we go next week? These are state occasions where the King and Queen are, and the Prince and Princess of Wales are deployed at the request of the government. And they take those responsibilities of representing all of us here in the UK to the world extremely seriously. The King, as you say, has been, I mean, he's been doing this kind of work for more than 5 decades. And, you know, I've been privileged to witness it up close, and the professionalism with which he both delivers the set piece moments, but also the deftness of touch when he has to handle those diplomatic moments, especially if something does go wrong, as occasionally it will do. They are a very safe pair of hands. They take the job very seriously. They don't let it close out any possibility for fun and amusement. Don't forget, they will want their guests, the President, First Lady, to be enjoying their visit, to make memories as human beings as well. So they'll be very, very focused, but they'll also be acting as hosts as any of us might do.
Okay, so you were telling us that you've obviously been an insider, and you've been privy to some of what goes on behind the scenes. And in the build-up to a visit like this, clearly lots of meetings have to take place, and I'm assuming between not just British government entities, the Buckingham Palace, the government, but also with the Americans to make sure that everyone's really on the same page. I mean, can those meetings get quite heated? Are there sometimes differences of opinion?
I think you're absolutely right. The preparations take months to get right. The good thing is, you know, the royal family, their team around them, and the government, of course, has got a great deal of experience of doing these things. I must say, I wouldn't like to disappoint your viewers, but in that very British way, you know, there may be a difference of opinion, but I never saw a sort of any temper, any emotion come into those discussions. It's not the way things are done. People are thinking through the options. They're united by a common goal of what these trips are there to do. Yes, there'll be points of negotiation across the programme. Of course there will. But the team, certainly at the Palace, who I work with directly, Sir Clive Alderton, the Principal Private Secretary to His Majesty, is an absolute consummate professional, and knows how to navigate those diplomatic challenges as they come along, and does so with great skill, as you would hope that he would.
Any anecdotes you can share with us about the 2019 state visit? Did everything go according to plan, or were there one or two little things that didn't happen that, you know, the way you'd hoped they might?
I remember the state visit in 2019, and when the then Prince of Wales and Duchess of Cornwall, as they then were welcoming the President and First Lady to Clarence House for tea. When people had been suggesting that perhaps there might be this showdown between the environmental prince and the oil and gas president. And the first thing that happened was there was a lineup, one of these very set piece photographs of the portraits, so that everyone could capture it for posterity. And the room was full of people, much busier than usual, as everybody wanted to see the president and everybody was anxious about what was going to happen. And I remember, just as they turned to depart and go into the room, the now Queen turned round to her team and winked at them. And in that moment, I thought, that is her to a T. It's as if to say, listen, I know everybody's terrifically worried about what may go on now when we're pouring the tea, but don't worry, you're in safe hands. We're not going to let the side down. And it really just broke the ice, and actually was the beginning of a really very warm and friendly trip.
Okay, I mean, that's a lovely sort of indication of the, you know, the warmth perhaps between the now Queen and the people working for her. And I just wanted to ask you lastly, I mean, supposing there had been a blunder on that trip, or indeed on this trip, I mean, where would the buck stop?
Again, a very good question. I like to think that if there are mistakes that you know, when I was there, that we owned them as a team. But obviously, you know, there is a high level of expectation, and those people that are running the show, whether on the US side, in the government side, or in the royal household, there will be someone at whom the buck stops. But I'm glad to say that on the last occasion, and certainly what we've seen of this one so far, everything seems to be running pretty smoothly.
Okay, fair to say this is the most important engagement so far of the new King's rule, would you say?
Well, I mean, you have, of course, the death of the late Queen and the accession and all of the global attention that came both on those days and the accession in May the following year. I will say they are used to the big occasion. They're very comfortable on the big stage, and yes, this is one of the big ones without a doubt. But my experience of the last US state visit, of those other big occasions, they are places where the royal family operate in a very, very comfortable way. Don't forget, he's been doing this for more than 50 years. The Queen has been doing it for getting on for 30 years. This is not their first rodeo, and I think that if I could choose a team to have out there representing the UK, of course I'm biased, but I certainly would say that they are the kind of people that I'm delighted that we have representing the UK.
Okay, well, we really appreciate you sharing those insights with us. Thank you very much indeed. Julian Payne, former press secretary to the British royal family. Thank you very much indeed.